Well, alright. What do you know? So, you guys wanted extra content. I'm going to give you extra content. Simply for the fact that I'm in a process of packing right now. I'm actually going to go on like a short little trip Friday afternoon and I come back Sunday. So I figured since I might not be able to do a lot of content this year, most likely not, I'll put this in one giant video now. I don't know how long this is going to be because I got to cover a whole bunch of guys that were buzzworthy, and for the sake of it, I'm not going to do a lot of tight ends, simply because of the fact that I don't like tight ends. I know that's kind of a cop-out. The only one that I might touch on is Jimmy Graham, just because I think he's the one guy that's created the most buzz this season. Well, actually, you know what? I should touch on tight ends. I'll touch on probably Graham will be in this video, Trey Burton will be in this video, and I don't know, man. There's a lot of guys. Maybe David Njoku. But, I mean, to be honest, nobody went out of their way. I'm basing this off of the picks of where you got certain guys and if I think it was worth the hype for you guys to take them or not. And for the sake of this video, so you guys watch all the content, I am not going to indicate on the title of this video if this is the boom or the bust. It's going to be a combination of both, and then you're going to look in the video description and see which guys you're most likely interested in listening about. So for example, it might be an individual person and then it might be a battle and how I think things are going to play out. Again, what I say obviously doesn't mean what happens. However, if you do agree with me, this could be a great opportunity for you to really put in a guy in the starting lineup, or maybe you're not high on it and I just hyped somebody up and you can go out and kind of sell that guy. The draft is now over. I am not smoke screening whatsoever. I will put some of my guys in there as well. So we're going to go in mostly based on the way the picks were. Like I said, let me know what you think about this. This is something new I haven't really done unless you've come up to me in person and asked. So let's get into it. All right, the first person up. Now, I'm not going to talk necessarily about guys in the first round, okay? I mean, I don't see any reason to. I'm not going to talk about guys like a Keenan Allen because we know what he is already. It's just a matter of if he stays healthy. But let's talk about a guy who's ready to ascend into that wide receiver 1 status for most likely the rest of his career. We're going to talk about Davante Adams first. I flat out think this was a fantastic pick. And in fact, if I was going a wide receiver early in the draft, he was a guy I would love to pair as a wide receiver too. Rob had gotten him as a wide receiver 1. This is my take on Davante Adams. I think this guy's going to be a flat-out stud. Just a few facts I want to break down. The NFL Top 100. Yeah, I know, it's pretty shitty rankings. Excuse my French, but the one thing that you do like about that segment is what players talk about other players. And there was a few DBs talking about Davante Adams. A few of them said that he was probably the toughest assignment that they had to guard. That's a big praise considering you had Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb at that point last year. Davante Adams is going to lead this team in touchdowns. I think that is a given. The only guy who might kind of challenge him is Jimmy Graham, and he is also in this segment, so you don't want to miss that. Right off the bat, the guy looks very dominant at the line. You cannot press him. He's unpressable pretty much. The only thing that stops him is if the defense rolls into a bracket coverage, but with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, you can't do that when you have guys underneath like Randall Cobb and a guy who could go deep like Geronimo Allison and check downs to your running backs. You just can't do that. Adams has I think he's already a lock for 10 touchdowns. He definitely can push a lot more, especially with the NFL scoring system now in place with the whole rules on the defense. There's going to be a lot of scoring this year. Davante Adams will easily finish inside the top 10. I think he has top 5 upside this season. Believe it or not, I actually had him ranked as my number 5 wide receiver. I had him one spot under Julio Jones. I actually had him over Michael Thomas. I had him over Keenan Allen just because I think the touchdown upside will be there for this guy. I do think he's going to fit somewhere in that 80, maybe even 90 catch range. If he stays healthy, this guy's going to be a stud. And believe it or not, I do think he is going to be the breakout candidate for wide receiver this year. And now, no, I'm not trying to channel my inner Michael Fabiano. Yeah, we know he's going to be good, but I think he's going to be fantastic. I think this was a really good pick, and Davante Adams is on my boom list. All right, next guy we're going to talk about also winning round 2, and that's a guy I'm also very, very high on. This is another boom. It's Jordan Howard. If you're a guy who's in on Jordan Howard, it's because either you've owned him in the past or you kind of know what you're looking at game film. He is a rare breed nowadays. He is what I call a traditional running back. He's a guy who likes to run it up the gut. The Bears have a fantastic run-blocking offensive line. They brought in a better offensive guru this time than freaking John Fox, who's not an offensive guru. They're going to find ways to get him the ball, not only just in the running game, but in the passing game. I firmly believe he has potential to lead running backs in rushing touchdowns even this season. If you heard on my earlier podcast, I think Melvin Gordon, Leonard Fournette, and Jordan Howard are all dark horses to lead the league in rushing touchdowns. I love Jordan Howard. I think that even with game script dependency that he's been the last 2 seasons, that's a minor concern. I know there was a part earlier in the season where people thought Tariq Cohen was this next beast. Jordan Howard clearly is still the better running back. Cohen will still have a nice year. I think for our league, though, because of the return yards, I think he's going to have a very solid floor. But Jordan Howard, I think, will finish for running backs. I think he's a guaranteed lock for top 10. With the touchdowns, it might, if it gets out of control, I can't say top 5. He might finish 7. But the guy is going to be a flat-out stud. I really like Jordan Howard this year. All right. Here's the next guy. All right, next guy who was also taken in the second round. Had a lot of buzz May and June, and then July came, and then you started to see a lot of doubters. Let's talk about Jerrick McKinnon. I want you to now kind of just picture this, and you'll see a different side of Jerrick McKinnon, all right? All right. If he didn't have a name, all right, I'm talking about Jerrick McKinnon. If he didn't have a name and it said 49ers sign running back to 5-year extension, I think everybody would hop onto it because why? The Kyle Shanahan theory. I get it. We all get it. There's been a lot of running backs who have succeeded under this system with the Shanahans in particular. I fully get it. But there's a lot of red flags with Jerrick McKinnon. I'm not going to give you out this site in particular because this is what I use, and with our competition getting a lot more better, bottom line, it's a combine metric system, and I know it's not the best to go off of, but you look at Jerrick McKinnon and you kind of think to yourself, all right, man, this guy is a scat back. He can make people miss. His elusive rating is actually not that good. And by elusive rating, I mean it's your ability to kind of evade tackles and make people miss in the open field. The one thing that is good about Jerrick McKinnon, though, is when there's a new stat, I think Mike Clay bought it into it. Some stupid writer, I don't know. But it's evaded tackles after the first contact. McKinnon actually ranked inside the top 5 last year. Now, that's pretty impressive. What's not impressive is what he does after the first tackle. He's going to need a lot of blocking for him to succeed, and I think the only way that's going to happen for Jerrick McKinnon is if the guy is in a committee. Right after the first preseason game, the Niners looked like a mess, man. McKinnon was not there. I think George Kittle and Matt Breida also went down. The Dallas defense looked pretty serviceable, which is kind of scary. I know it's just preseason, but these are things that if you were hyped on Jerrick McKinnon, after that preseason game you were down, he's already dinged up, and then the organization says, yeah, this guy is not our bell cow. So from an organizational standpoint, this might not be a great signing. I think McKinnon is going to be involved in a timeshare. Now, he is officially on my bust list simply for the fact that you paid a second-round pick for the guy. Okay? I think McKinnon is going to be what he was last year. You might get 1 or 2 games where he pops off for 20 points, but let's not get it confused here. This is going to be a committee type of situation where McKinnon will be best used in space, but with the metrics and his career, I'm not buying into it. I think McKinnon finishes as an RB2 more than he does an RB1. I think he falls short of 200 fantasy points. All right, here we go. Speaking of guys that were buzzworthy, Jerrick McKinnon was the buzzworthy guy. He was 1A. 1B then has to be Joe Mixon. All right, let me break it down with Joe Mixon. Last year, coming in as a rookie, everybody was hyped for this guy. They thought, oh my God, this guy's going to be the next big thing. He flopped his rookie year. I can remember maybe 1 or 2 good games that he actually had. And now I'm not talking about fantasy point-wise. I'm talking about actual real-life NFL games that's going to have to translate into this season. The only game I remember him being very, very good in was against the Tennessee Titans, which, I mean, take it for a grain of salt. I mean, whatever. Here's my opinion on Joe Mixon. I think the guy just has a great opportunity. I don't think he's that great of a running back. Here are a lot of things that we're seeing. Last year, it was him not going vertically up the field. It's the horizontal BS, and that's still happening. He's dancing around the line of scrimmage. He's not hitting the hole that well unless it's like wide open. So either that's on the play calling, but the technique is still not there with Joe Mixon, in my personal opinion. This was a guy I did like just based off of opportunity, and we know that opportunity can triumph over talent most of the time. I don't think this is what you're looking for in Joe Mixon. There's going to be a lot of growing pains during the season. In fact, I do think that, with the team setup that you have, Andre, in particular, I think having him as an RB2 behind Ezekiel Elliott is not going to kill you that much, but I do think there's going to be a lot of games where you're going to wish that you had chosen somebody else. Mixon is in the driver's seat, so I don't feel like he's holding something back in the preseason. The Bengals have looked awful in the preseason. Mixon looked very good, though. The one thing I will say about Mixon's game, which is why I'm not putting him totally on the bus radar, is that they are using him lined out wide as a receiver. Now, that's very good for his value. The first game where he took the screen pass, made a guy miss. In the open field, if against a DB, obviously you're a running back, you got to make that happen. I don't know if the opportunity is going to be there for him to be this bell cow guy. Now, if it is, you're going to get an automatic RB2 no matter what. But I will think as the season progresses, you're going to see a little bit of Gio Bernard sprinkled in. And because of the price where you paid for Joe Mixon, I am not high on him this year. All right, so this is one of the segments I was talking about. When there's like a battle or like a lot of uncertainty with one team, let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings wide receivers, and now you have a new quarterback in Kirk Cousins. You no longer have Pat Shurmur. You have a different offense in place. All right, so what do I think about the Minnesota Vikings wide receivers? Now, I am going to give you a little bit of a conspiracy theory that I've been following a few of the writers, and, it's not numbers. I mean, anybody can kind of find numbers. You can just go on Google, go on Twitter, put in somebody's numbers. They'll give it to you. I want to give you more of a conspiracy game plan theory with one of these guys in particular. All right, Stephon Diggs. Well, okay, this is now probably 3 or 4 years where we've all wanted to see Stephon Diggs take that next step. If there is ever a year where he's going to do it, it's going to be this year. But what have we seen with Stephon Diggs? Weeks 1 through 3. Oh my God, we've got the wide receiver 1 we've been looking for, and then what happens? The guy gets hurt, and injuries have derailed him throughout his entire career. Stephon Diggs is essentially Keenan Allen with minor injuries, if you kind of think about it, as far as progress is concerned. Obviously, they're totally 2 different types of wide receivers. Terrence Newman, his rookie season, said that this is the next Antonio Brown. Now, when somebody declares that, of course, you're going to get hyped up for the guy. Diggs, I do think, is primed for a breakout season. I'm going to say this every single year. It's not that the guy doesn't have the talent. It's if he can stay healthy. And if he does, I do think that this is going to be Kirk Cousins' favorite target. Now, a guy on the opposite end, Adam Thielen. Last year, Thielen had a season for the ages. But let's not forget, a lot of people were putting the bus flag up with this guy, okay? We get it. He's a feel-good story, and we want those guys to succeed. But you don't want them to succeed when their ADP skyrockets into the 3rd round. And I totally understand that. I totally get it. But the year 2016, he finished off December pretty good, so we knew that things were trending in the right direction. And then they started to move him around in the slot. And then this guy, out of nowhere, looked like he had one of the best hands in the league. He made an amazing catch against the Saints in that playoff game. The guy's a superior talent. I don't think there's any reason for him to be on the bust radar. Okay? If you look at it now, if you want to go to Kirk Cousins, Cousins does a really good job spreading the ball. Now, Cousins' best year was when he had Garcon, Jamison Crowder, Jordan Reed, and Deshaun Jackson. All of those guys had solid seasons for him to spread the ball around. Now, let's not forget, those were 4 decent, not amazing targets on that team. Crowder had his best season. I think you're only going to deal with 3 targets. But as far as his catches are concerned, this is a conspiracy theory, and you can say, if it's not right, okay, I'm going to throw it out there. If Kendall Wright is to make the Minnesota Vikings, I as crazy as this sounds, I think Thielen's catches can go down. Now, what do I mean by that? Kendall Wright is then automatically going to play slot. If you've seen Kendall Wright, he's a slot receiver. He cannot play on the outside. I am not telling you to go out and pick Kendall Wright. Now, Harsh, you might be the only one to do that. What I am telling you, though, is the way this team is going to game plan, if they are in 3 wide receiver sets, you are not going to see Adam Thielen in the slot unless Kendall Wright is playing there. So if you are an Adam Thielen owner, Johnny, you better pray to God that Treadwell makes the team and not Kendall Wright. But I will say, I think either or, Thielen will still finish as a wide receiver 2 on the season. I don't think there's any pause for concern. The PPR points, though, might go down slightly. I know it sounds so crazy, but the way the NFL has slot receivers and whatnot, this is going to be the guy who might get that slot receiver role, and it could take a dent. I'm not saying it makes him a bust, but it's just a little bit of a concern. So that might be that. Okay. All right. Next guy on the list. Let's talk about some other guys that were buzzworthy, and a lot of guys who did not want to pay up for this guy because it just seemed like he was getting a lot of easy targets. But that's why I love the guy. That's Juju Smith-Schuster. The guy came out of nowhere. He stepped up, and that's why I really like him, man. Whatever Martavis Bryant was going through last year, obviously he was upset with the organization that they did take him. People started getting at him. It started to affect him on social media, Twitter included. Schuster comes in and has a phenomenal rookie year. Why in the world would anybody think that this guy would fall off a cliff? Anybody? Because it's not me. This guy now has a full year under the Pittsburgh Steelers playbook. Pittsburgh coaching staff, okay? They see this guy as the clear-cut number 2 guy, not James Washington. In fact, I was listening to a underground fantasy podcast. I'm not going to reveal that so far. One of the guys has a friend who's a writer for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he goes into the locker room and wants to talk to the wide receivers coach. Wide receivers coach pretty much says this: James Washington is a phenomenal talent, but let's not get it, this is a quote, let's not get it twisted, in quotes. Schuster is still going to be the guy who can see around 100 targets this season. Well, what does that mean? If you look at the way the Pittsburgh Steelers are constructed, okay? Jesse James looks like he could catch 20 touchdowns with his height. He's just not a good football player. Vance McDonald, they bring in. Johnny J. Fresh, I'm going to quote you right here. J. Fresh likes Vance McDonald and thinks that people are still sleeping on Vance McDonald. But Johnny, you're looking at a Jacksonville Jaguars game where this team was in they had to throw the ball. Now, the thing with Todd Haley is that Todd Haley doesn't utilize his tight ends that much in the red zone. But I do think that Big Ben Roethlisberger, he could look to Vance McDonald, but I do think that Schuster is going to be his red zone target, along with James Washington on fades. I have no reason to believe that Schuster falls off a cliff. If he does, it's due to injury concerns, which would then elevate James Washington's value a lot. And for that being said, Juju Smith-Schuster is the definition of a wide receiver 2. I think he is going to, worst case scenario, on a week 8 to 10. But I don't think he's going to pop off for 20-point games. It's going to be that 8 to 10 with a sprinkle in of high teens. I think he's exactly what you look for in a wide receiver 2. So this is a situation, we're going to talk about the Rams wide receivers. This is a situation that, doing research before the draft, I kept pacing around, and it's hard to figure out. I'm going to do the cop-out route, and you take the cheapest one you can get, which is Cooper Kupp. Let me break down the reason of why you would like these guys the best. We are, without a doubt, the best talent on this roster is Brandon Cooks. I don't know if that's going to translate necessarily to the Los Angeles Rams passing attack. McVay, unless this guy really is the genius, if he finds a way to utilize Brandon Cooks, and get him into a solid, I don't know. I don't even know what to say at this point. If you like Brandon Cooks, it's because of talent alone. You think he's going to catch a lot of bombs, but I don't think the roles change that much as when they had Sammy Watkins. I think maybe they take a little bit more targets sprinkled into Cooks' area, but the third round price, man, you're kind of banking on him to be very good. Now, I don't know about you guys. I was not that thrilled with Brandon Cooks with Tom Brady last year. I didn't see much that made me jump out and believe that this guy is going to be the guy that the Saints thought they were going to get in the first round. They did it. The thing that is interesting is that they did lock him up for 5 years already. Now, what does that tell me? This guy's going to be part of their offense for years to come. But I do think that this system is a role player system. Brandon Cooks is that deep threat guy. He runs goes. He runs post routes and occasional bubble screens that they might run to him. I think that's what you're going to get from Brandon Cooks. The thing that concerns me the most is, though, when they go against good man-to-man coverage corner teams, Cooks really doesn't step up to the challenge. In fact, he's not very good against the elite corners, which is why I think that Cooper Kupp and even Robert Woods. Let's break down those other two guys. If you were a Robert Woods guy, the only argument you could say is he was amazing last year, and he really had a phenomenal second half of the season. He studied into the playbook, and he's now a good role player. Cooper Kupp's the interesting one. I know a lot of people don't like him because they think he's the odd man out. I think Cooper Kupp has a chance to lead the team in catches. Now, I'm not saying 100 catches. That'd be ridiculous. I think the catches are going to be kind of spread out. I think Cooks has 60 to 70 catch potential, same as Robert Woods, but I do think that Kupp would be the guy to reach the 70 to 80 catch. It's very, very weird. I can't even talk. It's very weird. I mean, the best case scenario is that they have two guys hit 1,000. I don't think Kupp is an 1,000-yard wide receiver. There's just a lot of firepower on this offense, and it's going to be a thing at the end of the day where if you took the guy who kind of is the breakout guy, you're the one who won in this scenario. It's very hard to decide. I'm going to say Kupp leads the team. He could lead the team in touchdowns because of his red zone targets. He has Jared Goff's eye. Considering that their tight ends are not developed either, I don't see any way that goes away. So I think Kupp's got a potential for the catches and the touchdowns. That alone, hello. I mean, that would be my guy I would shake, and honestly, I think I'm more buying into him. Robert Woods, I think, was phenomenal last year, but I also think he benefited from Sammy Watkins not adjusting to the playbook at all. And now you have Brandon Cooks in there, so I think his value goes down a little bit. And I think him and Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks, fantasy points at the end of the season, I think they might be equal. I just feel like Cooks has more of those boom games, whereas Robert Woods might have the safest floor all season. That's just my personal take. I really can't go any further than that. Okay, so here's a guy that I'm going to come off as I don't like this guy at all this season. But I'm actually really mad about these so-called fantasy football analysts or enthusiasts that go out, have a good YouTube channel, and they are none other than your average guy in a fantasy football league. I'll get to that in a minute, okay? The guy on this list that I'm talking about is Kenyon Drake. I know the owner who has Kenyon Drake is very, very guilty of looking at Yahoo projections. Now, if you're telling me that Kenyon Drake is projected 15 points a week, I'll take the bet. I'll take $100 and say that he gets the under every single week. Let me explain something to you guys, okay? Kenyon Drake might have been the easiest fade this season. What do I mean by that? All right, let's break it down to you what happened last season. Jay Ajayi goes, okay, out of nowhere, shocker. We were like, oh, wow, I thought this guy was going to be the future of the Miami Dolphins run game. He's gone. Miami Dolphins don't have anybody else. They have Kenyon Drake and Damian Williams, and Damian Williams has proved nothing more than a guy who can fill in a third down role. The only reason Damian Williams was rostered on the Miami Dolphins is because he was a good pass-protecting running back, okay? So, by default, Kenyon Drake, let's step up. We're kind of in some weird rebuild mode, but we think we can trust you to carry the load for our team. And you know what? From a fantasy perspective, he did a phenomenal job last year. If you were the one who owned Kenyon Drake, you were fine. You had no complaints whatsoever with Kenyon Drake. All right? I get it. You sprinkled in 4 to 5 catches on a good day, and he looked pretty good off the line of scrimmage. But whenever you look at a guy's size like Kenyon Drake, who looks more like a returner than he does a running back, you got to bring somebody in to split the carries with him. And a guy who we used to love 10 years ago is now the most annoying pest in the world, and that's Frank Gore. And he's going to cut into his value. Last season, Kenyon Drake did not have anybody to split time with. That is why he finished so high. I mean, it's pretty common sense, simple math. If there is one thing you do like about Kenyon Drake, though, it is the catching ability. So I do think that because of that, he might finish as an RB2, but it's going to be more on the lower end because I don't think this guy is going to be used around the goal line. In other words, he's going to need a lot of breathers this season. In fact, I think Kenyon Drake, listen to me carefully, Kenyon Drake is going to be the after project from Lamar Miller. Same thing we talked about with Lamar Miller. The year in Miami, he's not getting enough carries. No, that's what he needed. If Kenyon Drake was ever to pull 20 carries, the guy's going to die on the field. That's just the way I simply feel about it. And now they brought in Frank Gore. Now, this is what I'm really ticked off about, okay? If you saw the Miami Dolphins Carolina Panthers preseason game, Drake had a good game. They used him on a lot of toss plays. They used him in open space. But bottom line, it was good play calling. I don't think it was necessarily Kenyon Drake's ability. This is where I get ticked off. You then have the guys like, I'm sorry, Jay. You have guys like the fantasy footballers who look at one preseason game and say, this guy's rising up my draft board. Well, no crap. I mean, if he was, if we looked at preseason highlights all day, everybody would be rising up their draft boards. But I don't like the fact that they look at what's going on and say for people to kind of take Kenyon Drake. Frank Gore's annoying. They didn't bring him in there to sit on the bench. Okay? I think this guy I think he was on a lot of people bust lists, but I just wanted to break it down even further for you guys. Let me know what you think about that one specifically. Here's an interesting situation. I think this is a lot of uncertainty, simply for the fact that these are a lot of new players on the team, okay? Now, instead of breaking down Allen Robinson in particular, I'm going to break down the whole Bears receiving core, which is why you can throw Trey Burton in here. If there's one guy who I think is going to return the most value in the draft, it's going to be Trey Burton. After Adam Shaheen went down, not that I think anybody was worried about Adam Shaheen, but he did come in and have a few sprinkled in good games last year. Trey Burton is going to be the guy who's going to return the most value. He's going to lead this team in touchdowns. That, I think, is a given at this point. Whether you're somebody who believes in SleeperBot or RotoWorld and say that he's going to break Martellus Bennett's tight end record. Now, to me, that's even sad that their best tight end of all time is Martellus Bennett. He's an underrated talent, but oh my God. So yeah, that's not even setting the bar that high if you kind of look at it like that. I think the receiving core comes more into play of Trubisky's playing style, okay? Mitchell Trubisky is a guy who stared down the middle of the field constantly last year. You can do two things with that. Rookie growing pains, or maybe it's because they didn't have a guy on the outside. Well, they kind of did do that, but it was Allen Robinson. But let me ask you guys a question, okay? When was the last time Allen Robinson was dominant? Okay, we got to go back 4 years maybe. The last time I remember where he was a buzzy hype pick was when Brian took him in the first round, and he was not that good. When he finally became the quote-unquote guy, defenses were keying on him a lot. He's a phenomenal talent. I'm not going to take anything away from Allen Robinson. This is a guy that actually I was buying into, but then I started to see there was somewhat of a downward trend with his ability. I don't know. I think he's a decent wide receiver. I think if you're looking for a wide receiver 1, I don't think you found it. I think you're going to find an inconsistent boomer bust wide receiver 2, simply for the fact that, he might win a lot of jump ball situations. That was one thing you liked with him and Bortles in Jacksonville. But the year he was good was the Jags were so bad. It was the stat that, what was it? The 34 touchdowns Bortles had that year, 29 of them came when they were trailing by more than 14 points. Okay? So do the math. And I actually think the Bears might be competitive. There's a lot of negative script for Allen Robinson that there is positive. And then there comes a guy in Anthony Miller. Now, I'm not going to go out on a J limb here and call him the next Antonio Brown, which I actually did some more research on that, and I'm not going to get into that. But at the same token, Anthony Miller, all right, I like his talent a lot. He's a guy who's going to work the intermediate part of the field, and I think he's going to be really successful because of the fact that you have Allen Robinson and Trey Burton. If Trey Burton's going to stretch the middle of the field, guess who's going to go underneath? It's going to be Anthony Miller. I wouldn't be at all surprised if there was a towards midseason and if the gap got closer between Robinson and Anthony Miller as to which Bears wide receiver was to own. I have high expectations for Anthony Miller, believe it or not. I mean, a lot of people do, but I think he fits in perfectly for what the Bears are trying to do. And that's my personal take on the Bears wide receiver situation. All right, figured I kill two birds with one stone. Keep going. The Denver Broncos running back situation. All right, this is one that I think is kind of obvious at this point. But in case you had any doubts, I'm still going to cover it. Which Denver Bronco running back was the guy to own? Well, in July, you got the headline, Devontae Booker was to start. Okay, that to me was the biggest joke. Second behind Marlon Mack getting 1,500 all-purpose yards. Okay, let's be real, kid. All right, let's go. Devontae Booker versus Royce Freeman. This is a clear-cut slam dunk. Royce Freeman is by far going to win this battle. I don't think there's any case in point, any doubt. Can Royce Freeman be a bell cow? My answer is absolutely yes. The beginning of July, this was a guy I told everybody to kind of go out on a limb for and get. I actually, at a bar, wrote on a chalkboard, draft Royce Freeman for those fellow people who live at the seaside shore or whatever. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. But bottom line is, Royce Freeman is a phenomenal talent. He's a guy who can move the pile. He's going to be a bruiser to bring down at the goal line. He's definitely got 10 touchdown upside this season. I know Yahoo analyst Brad Evans is the highest on him. He thinks he's going to get 1,300 all-purpose yards with 13 touchdowns, or 10, whatever it was. Look, man, I am not going that far. I will think that he has the potential to hit 1,000 and 10 touchdowns. I think the 10 touchdowns is a little bit of the reach, but I think it's a guaranteed 1,000 since C.J. Anderson in a limited capacity last year was able to hit that. I think it's a slam dunk. What I don't see happening for the guy, though, is the pass-catching ability. I actually do think that's where Devontae Booker might not get cut because of his pass-catching ability. People think that Booker was good in pass protection last year. If that's the only positive thing about him. So I do think on passing downs, I think Devontae Booker is essentially the third down running back that they were hoping they weren't going to get. Let's not get it twisted here either, guys. 3 years ago, when they drafted Devontae Booker, they thought to themselves, okay, this is the next big guy that we're going to get. In fact, there was a lot of analysts that were pulling him up in round 7. I think the most ridiculous thing that year was the hype on him and CJ Prosise. I just wasn't understanding it at all. I thought Anderson was still a really good back. Now he's somewhere else, but I mean, honestly, the way this situation is going to pan out, Royce Freeman is clear-cut the dog to own. The one thing that could be, if you're a Devontae Booker owner, the one thing that could work in your favor is if he's still on kickoff returns, because he was last year. But I don't see any value with Booker whatsoever, to be honest with you. Alright, so for this next one, I'll try to tone it down a little bit here. Alright, okay, the Buccaneers running back situation. Again, if you had any doubts, which I don't. Ronald Jones versus Peyton Barber. It's slam dunk to Peyton Barber at this point. Everything I've read into Ronald Jones has been negative from beat writers. And now you have coaches getting really mad at this guy. Ronald Jones really just needs to take a year off, study the playbook, see what he can do to become a better NFL athlete. But I think the tremendous value here was Peyton Barber. I am not hyping up Peyton Barber as the next Tiki Barber or anything like that. I just think the guy won the battle. And with Charles Sims now officially hurt, I think there's now going to be a 2-man committee rather than a 3-man committee. Dirk Cutter is fighting for his job, too. He's going to put the guy who gives him the best chance to win. And who is that right now? It's Peyton Barber. Peyton Barber was a guy at times last year was touching the ball 20 times. There was a game in particular I remember where he had 20 carries for 105 yards. That's not bad. I mean, you're going to be fine with him. He is going to be a touchdown or bust kind of guy because I do think he's a guy who might chip in maybe 2 catches a game. So that is a little bit of a concern. But if you're getting a starting running back in round 14, why not? This was a slam dunk. There's nothing else to talk about. All right, next guy I'm going to talk about. This was probably one of my favorite picks in the draft. It was a guy I was targeting, and I thought I could have gotten him. I was very upset that I did not get him. It's Marshawn Lynch. Why do we like him so much? Because he's now discounted. Last year, I believe it was 3rd or 4th round, and now you get him at a 5th round discount. I was hoping it would be 6th, but hey, it's still a good pick either way. Listen. All right, I'm going to break it down for you simple on why this guy is going to be a boom player. He actually had a great month of December last year. If there was one positive thing for the Raiders last year, it was Marshawn Lynch. It wasn't Derek Carr. It wasn't definitely wasn't Amari Cooper. It wasn't even really Michael Crabtree. It was Marshawn Lynch. I still think he's got a lot in the tank. And guess who's running him the ball every game and calling the shots? Yeah, it's John Gruden. John Gruden still lives in 1990 football. He's going to run the guy about 20 times a game. Doug Martin is not a threat. If you were watching that preseason game, the one guy to keep an eye on is Chris Warren the third. That's just a deep sleeper. But Lynch is going to be phenomenal. I think he's already locked in as an RB2 just because of the workload alone. John Gruden went out and said, yeah, guys, I need to find a fullback for my roster. And guess what? People are like, well, fullbacks are kind of extinct, dude. If you're getting a fullback, it's not to throw him the ball. It's for him to lead block. You're going to see a lot of boring offense from the Oakland Raiders, but boring offense means that you're going to run a lot. I do think that Marshawn Lynch, his numbers with Alex Collins are going to be very, very similar. That's why I was not big on Alex Collins, because I knew I could get a guy in Marshawn Lynch a little bit later on. Marshawn Lynch is definitely on my boom segment. And Paul sent me a trade for him ASAP as soon as you listen to it. All right, so I don't want to cover many of my guys, but there is one guy I am going to throw out here. That's Mr. Corey Davis. Corey Davis, now, I don't know what Yahoo was on. They did have him ranked. His ADP on Yahoo apparently was ranked into the 4th round. I don't think anybody was buying it. Corey Davis is a phenomenal talent. The comparisons you hear are Terrell Owens. No, I don't think he's Terrell Owens at all, but his ability to box people out and win jump ball situations. In fact, a lot of the practice highlights that you're seeing, and I know it's just practice, and some people can take days off and not kind of admit it. He has a great first move, a great release off of press coverage. It's what you like to see. I was excited to see that he was in a preseason game. I think the only thing that stops Corey Davis from hitting his hype is the fact that he does have some injury history. Davis, though, last year, let's not forget, he started out very strong, and then you felt like he could ascend to the next level. News just came out today. Rashard Matthews got locked up for an extension, which is, I guess, pretty good. But he's going to man that slot role. Tywan Taylor is also a guy to keep a look on for, because Delaney Walker's already hurt. Corey Davis is going to have to be the guy who's going to step up the most for him. Jim Wyatt, the writer for the Tennessee Titans, and the guy who does the Touchdown Titans, that guy, all positive reports are for him. I think it's a matter of health for Corey Davis. Okay, this guy is not on my boom radar. This guy is on my explode radar. It's a guy I'm going to pay kudos to that is not on my team. I think it was the best. Now, granted, a lot of people don't think it was a reach. I think maybe it was just simply, but it was a phenomenal one. I'm not saying it was a bust. There's boom, and then there's guys who are about to explode. And I'm going to cover two guys in the same segment. Marquise Goodwin. All right, I think you're going to hit over 1,000 yards. I think his numbers will be very similar to a like a Marvin Jones maybe. I think he's going to get 1,000 yards, and I think 7 touchdowns. It's really good numbers. This is the breakout you want to see. He's Jimmy G's guy. Garcon is going to get completely phased out of this offense. Marquise Goodwin is set to kind of just do his thing. This was a guy that in drafts at first was ADP around 7 back in July, and then I guess people were starting to realize, okay, Garcon's a little bit older. Let me give you a reason why Garcon was an obvious fade this year, and this is why Garcon is on my bust, because Goodwin is set to explode, okay? Last year when they signed Garcon in the Kyle Shanahan system, well, guess what? They had nobody else on the team that they knew about, so yeah, he did good with all the catches and targets, but Garcon never really clicked with Jimmy Garoppolo. Who did? Marquise Goodwin. All of Garcon's good games came with C.J. Beathard and Brian Hoyer. Those two are no longer employed. Well, Beathard might be. I don't know about anybody else. But yeah, dude, I think this was the obvious fate of the draft. Garcon is not big on my list. This is a guy who might get cut by week 2. For fantasy, I don't know about real life. Anyway, without further doubt, Goodwin is the guy you want to own. Next situation I want to talk about. The Detroit Lions running back situation. All right, this is a big head scratcher because there's one guy we all want to take, and then there's 2 of them we want completely off of this team. But I don't run the show, so I can't tell you who's going to be gone, who's not. All right, let's break it down. So you have a guy in Kerryon Johnson they spent a really high draft pick on. Spent a really high draft pick on Kerryon Johnson. This is the guy we all want to succeed, but there's a lot of obstacles that are going in his way. LeGarrette Blount included, Theo Riddick included, and now you're hearing Amir Abdullah's roster spot might be safe. For what reason? It's a mess. I think if there was one committee, there's a lot of committees going on that we can't figure out. I think the Bucs, the Packers, the Lions, and I'm missing one. It'll come to me eventually. Oh, the Seahawks. That was another one. But I think this one is probably the messiest of the situations. Kerryon Johnson, I think the only way he becomes what we want him to become is if A, somebody gets cut, and I think the guy you want getting cut is LeGarrette Blount. If LeGarrette Blount is not cut, Kerryon Johnson is going to find a hard time keeping some value. Now, me personally, I think Amir Abdullah should be cut instantly. Riddick, I don't see getting cut just because of that PPR guy, but let's just imagine it for a second. If they keep all 4 of those backs on the roster, Blount is the short yardage guy. Kerryon Johnson is the guy who might get a ball on 1st and 2nd down. You're relying on him to break a big one every single time. It's very, very hard to do considering that the Detroit Lions are not a running team. A lot of their formations when they hand off the ball come in pistol or shotgun to the left of Matt Stafford with a tight end as a lead blocker. That's tough. That's tough to rely on, especially with the carries. If they keep 4 backs on, there's no way I can see Kerryon Johnson 16 carries, LeGarrette Blount 10. No, they're not a running team. They're a team that, honestly, the Detroit Lions run like Max does in Madden, okay? This is the best comparison I can give you. If their first run goes for a positive yard, the run game stays. If it goes for a negative yard, well, guess what? We're abandoning the run game completely. I think the only way you get excited about Kerryon Johnson is Blount gets cut because he's easily the guy who's the lead dog in this offense. Riddick comes on 3rd downs, and Amir Abdullah is just a guy who's holding a roster spot at that point. It's very, very, very tough at this point, but if you want me to go out on my limb, obviously Johnson is the one you want to own because of the upside, but I think a lot of things cut into his value. Okay, I'm going to break down 2 committees in one. I'm starting to realize there's a lot of guys I have to cover. So this 2 teams will be covered in both segments. And actually, it's kind of a scratching hairs kind of thing because I think both guys were taken in the same round. And who would you rather have? We're going to talk about the Eagles backs, and then we're going to talk about the Tennessee Titans backs. Now, I think the Titans back situation is a lot clearer than it is with the Eagles. But the lead guys who are going to leading both packs, here's what it comes down to. I had Derrick Henry ranked over Jay Ajayi simply for the fact that I knew what Derrick Henry's role was going to be. He was going to be the lead guy who's going to get a lot of carries in this offense with Dion Lewis spelling him, coming in the 2-minute offense. It's pretty clear what's going to happen with Derrick Henry. Jay Ajayi, on the other hand, I don't think the Eagles necessarily need Jay Ajayi, me personally. I think a lot of right things need to happen for Jay Ajayi, okay? First of all, Doug Peterson is the new Bill Belichick of running backs. This guy does not stick with one guy, all right? He's got Corey Clement, Wendell Smallwood, Darren Sproles, and there's probably Kenyon Barner still on that team. If Kenyon Barner is not still on that team, somebody fill me in because I know they got another back. And I am even more worried because Corey Clement is still hurt, but I heard progress is going there. And now Charcandrick West just got released. I would not be shocked at all if the Philadelphia Eagles went out and signed Charcandrick West. J.J. needs a lot of things to happen. He looked okay, not dominant. I know he had one big run But the thing that was concerning too was when Foles was going back to pass, he got blown up in pass protection. There are going to be a lot of games where you're going to get frustrated. You're going to see some other running backs come in. This is how it was last year. And guess what? The Eagles won with that formula last year. So that, to me, tells me nothing is going to change at all. J.J. would need at least not one. I think he needs 2 backs to go down. Because last year, I understand it was his first year. Now he's got a full year. And they said, let's not get it confused, all right? When a beat reporter or a writer says they expect J.J.'s touches to go up, okay? People automatically assume, oh, thank God, 15 plus a game. No, it means maybe he might get 5. 5 more, not 5 only. Yes, he will get the first crack at the lead job, but this is a fast-tempo offense with Carson Wentz. They're going to rotate a lot of backs in and out. The only thing that I will say that is good for him is that he has the touchdown upside, but I do recall them using Darren Sproles at the goal line for a few years. Now, yeah, I know Darren Sproles is old, but look, he's still an X factor in this offense. A lot right. I think more right has to happen for J.J. than it does for Derrick Henry. And that's just my take on both those backfield situations. Okay, so if there was a tight end I wanted to talk about, it's going to be the guy that many of us have owned before. I even won a championship with him at the helm, Jimmy Graham. All right, Jimmy Graham is obviously a lot older now. He's not as fast as what he used to be, but he's in a good situation, and that could mean a lot of good things for him. But I'm going to pump the brakes just a tad bit. While he does have the potential to lead that team in touchdowns because he is a big-bodied target, I wanted to kind of, based on one preseason play, and I know it goes against everything that I've said, look at the touchdown again. I want you to go online and look at Jimmy Graham Packers touchdown. Type it in. Look how the play develops. Every time they're in the red zone. In fact, if you could find a way to go rewatch that one game, every time they're in the red zone, Aaron Rodgers is staring down Davante Adams. This is the guy he has the most trust with. And that touchdown was his third or fourth read, and he just popped open because there was no pressure on Aaron Rodgers at all. And then go figure, the Steelers have no defense at all. Graham might have some games, but you're not expecting what you think you're going to get out of him. Now, I know on Brian's podcast, I think I made some outrageous... If everything went right for him and he was the Jimmy Graham of old, on this team, the Jimmy Graham of old would have gotten 15 touchdowns. Yeah, it's ridiculous, but yeah, there's no way. But he just doesn't look that good. He's going to have... I think as a matter of fact, actually, Adams was his first read, Cobb was his second, and his third probably would have been Allison or whoever that was. Graham just somehow popped open in the middle of the field. Rodgers doesn't throw to his tight end since Jermichael Finley. This is by far their best tight end since Jermichael Finley, but I don't think there's a lot to get excited about with Jimmy Graham in this offense. There's going to be games where you might see 2 touchdown games. Now, it reminds me of when the Seahawks had him, and you might see the same thing. He starts off bad for 2 games. Beat reporter comes out. They want Jimmy Graham to get the ball more. The next game, he goes off. He gets 2 touchdowns, and you're thinking, yeah, this is what I paid for. And then things start going downhill yet again. I think it's going to be an up and down roller coaster where you might end up with 10 touchdowns, but it's going to be very inconsistent. So at the price you paid for him, I don't know if he's going to return that value. All right, so this is a situation I'm actually very, 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 very passionate about, and I need to explain my outburst in the was it 6th? Hold on. No, I need to explain my outburst for you guys in the 7th round. As you all are aware, 7th round came around, and there was one guy I was specifically looking on my draft board list. Okay? And I'm looking, and I'm looking, and I'm looking, and I'm noticing that this guy is not taken yet, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm going to get somewhat of a steal from the draft. And then who do I have in front of me? Harsh, who snipes him right before me. That is Chris Carson, and I want to talk about the Seahawks running backs. Believe it or not, it is not Chris Carson the reason why I had an outburst. As a matter of fact, the reason why I was mad was simply for the fact that I am a big Rashard Penny owner. However, at the turn, I was going to go Carson and Rashard Penny. And that way, if Carson was to kind of pop off, then I'm like, all right, I made a good pick either way. That was kind of my thought process with those guys. I'm a bigger Rashard Penny person long-term than I am Chris Carson. Chris Carson did him no favors by fumbling twice in that preseason game. Carson is big. He's very big for a Seattle running back. But I think what Russell Wilson does, I think Rashard Penny fits the mold a little bit more perfectly here. As a matter of fact, if you have the balls to do it, I would even consider doing it. Buy low on Rashard Penny immediately. Paul might not even use him at all. But Paul, don't be a sucker. You're out of your mind if you think you're getting 15 points from Rashard Penny a week. The reason why they have him there is because they think he's going to be on return yards. And if you look at it, Chris Carson's points are going to be 3 points. The minute Penny and Carson's point get reversed, it's going to be something like this. Chris Carson, 10 points. Rashard Penny, 8. That's what it's going to look like. Mark it down. You heard it here first on Yahoo's projections. Go out and get Rashard Penny. I think Carson... Pete Carroll raves about the guy, and it's because I think he's more of a feel-good story. But they spent a lot of draft capital on Rashard Penny. He's the guy I'd rather own than Chris Carson. And apparently his finger is fixed or something. So that's a guy I want to own if I'm interested in any Seattle back. All right, man, I'm trying to go and roll through along with this. I think most of the segments have been under 5 minutes. This one might take around 3. The Packers backs. All right. The first Packer back that was taken off the board in our league was Aaron Jones. I think if you're asking me which one has the most upside, it's Aaron Jones, and I'm more upside than I am floor. Jamal Williams got hurt, but it's very, very minor. In the round where Max got him at, why not? The way I see it is this, okay? There's a lot of things you like. I think Montgomery is the odd man out. I don't see much of where Montgomery would kind of play a role in this team. The only way Montgomery, he needs a lot to happen. He needs 2 things to happen. Here's the knocks on all the Green Bay Packers backs. Jamal Williams, not the best runner out of shotgun, and when you have Aaron Rodgers there, that's going to be a problem. The knock on Aaron Jones is that he's very bad in pass protection. And who was the best rookie pass protector last year? According to Pro Football Focus, it was Jamal Williams. Right there, Max is probably getting very excited. Yeah, that's important. But when it comes from runs out of the gun, Aaron Jones was phenomenal. I think Jamal Williams was a little bit better last year because they had Hundley under center. They could not run their offense like they would with Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers is one of a kind. You got to get underneath the center and plow it. Your high school BS, ISO, halfback power, off tackle. They were running all those things with Jamal Williams. But when Aaron Jones played with Aaron Rodgers, dude, it was great. So I'm basing it off of that pretty much. If Montgomery was ever to be the guy to own, he needs those 2 things to happen. Jamal Williams just can't get it done on the ground, and Aaron Jones can't pass protect. Ty Montgomery will still have a roster spot, I think, but I think it's more involved in a pass game situation. However, if one of these backs was to go down, you will see a Ty Montgomery sighting yet again. That's my take on the Packers backs. After the suspension, I fully expect Aaron Jones to be the guy to own. I do think Jamal Williams carries just a little bit value, but I think it's going to be more of a 2-man committee more than it is going to be just Ty Montgomery. Or 3-man, excuse me. Okay, this is one guy that I was not very big on, and I'm not coming around per se, but I don't know what his stat line is going to be at the end of the season. This is a guy who's created a lot of buzz because he was a high draft pick. He went to Clemson. I'm talking about Mike Williams. Last year, dude had the worst rookie season I can ever remember from a high-end draft pick who was healthy all year until the end of the season. The only thing you do like about him is that he's going to get a lot of touchdowns. All right. But I want you guys to focus for a second. The Los Angeles Chargers, excuse me. In that preseason game, he made a acrobatic catch that looks good on a highlight tape, but it does not look that good from an NFL catching perspective on how coaches want you to catch the ball. In fact, James Washington's catch was a little bit better, and I'm not doing this because I have James Washington. But Mike Williams, the only thing that I've seen that he is able to do is jump balls. I don't think he runs routes very well at all. He's actually not that fast, and I think the reason why people are really hyped about the guy is because they see the size and they see that acrobatic catch that he made in the end zone. But let's not get it confused. Just because that player has one great attribute does not make him a great wide receiver. I think this is the thing where you're going to get caught up in the preseason hype a little bit too much, and I don't see it. Now, if you want to go back in Phillip Rivers' career, well, there is one thing that is going for Mike Williams, all right? Let's break it down for you a lot. I'm going to throw some names, blast from the past, if you will. Keenan Allen's the guy who works the intermediate field. Tyrell Williams is a guy they call once in a while for. So that vertical threat guy on the outside should belong to Mike Williams. Phillip Rivers in his career has been able to produce that kind of role with a Malcolm Floyd, with a Vincent Jackson, and Denario Alexander. Those are three guys that were fantastic in that role. Here's my only issue, though. All three of those guys were actually, believe it or not, with the exception of Alexander, good route runners, or they had the speed to do it. Mike Williams has the leapfrog ability to kind of go up there, maybe, and make a good catch, but compared to those other two guys, he is not a polished route runner, number one, and he is not that quick. I think if anything, you're going to see a low receiving yardage number. I know Yahoo, I think, has him predicted at 700. I'm going to take the under on that. And he's also doing this with the 2s and 3s. He is not doing this with the first team offense. I think it's going to be a while until Mike Williams fully puts it together. I don't know if he will fully put it together. So therefore, I am pumping the brakes a little bit. You might get some touchdowns, but he's going to be very hard to figure out to start in and week out. Okay, so this was a guy who I think this is the last time we're ever going to hear this guy's name ever mentioned in a fantasy circle, because I do think he is not going to live up to the hype at all whatsoever. But I think our league saves his ability, and it pains me to say this because I've actually liked this guy throughout his career and I've wanted him to succeed. Injuries have derailed him throughout. They're still hurting him as we speak, and it's Tyler Lockett. I think this is the end of the road for Tyler Lockett. I want to be heavily invested. My thing with Tyler Lockett is, if it was going to happen, it would have already happened. It would have already happened, all right? It would have already happened. I don't see any reason, especially if Doug Baldwin goes down and he's completely out of it. What in God's name thinks that Tyler Lockett is going to be the guy to suck up all those targets? No, thank you. The Seattle Seahawks have now Russell Wilson, Doug Baldwin, and a bunch of guys who run the intermediate part of the field. The one thing you like about Lockett, though, is Russell Wilson's ability to extend plays. Now, a lot of people can argue, if you are a Tyler Lockett guy, Paul Richardson is not there. Okay, I get that. I'm going to throw out a guy who's actually going to be used very, very solid in the Seattle Seahawks passing attack, who might put a dent. I'm not saying go out and pick up this guy, who might put a dent in Tyler Lockett's value. And it's a guy that a lot of people have forgotten about. But that's Jaron Brown. Yeah, I'm talking about that Jaron Brown. I actually do believe that Jaron Brown actually comes close to Tyler Lockett's yardage total this season. The Arizona Cardinals' most targeted wide receiver, other than Larry Fitzgerald last year, was Jaron Brown. In fact, out of all the receivers that had at least 60-plus targets last season, Jaron Brown ranked 4th in catchable targets. And let's backtrack a little bit here. That was with Carson Palmer, and I can't even remember the other Cardinal quarterback. Somebody help me out. I'm lost. But he caught a lot of his passes. Now, I'm not saying, hey, Jaron Brown, I'm dropping Tyler Lockett for Jaron Brown then, Nick. No. What I'm saying is this. It's not going to be Doug Baldwin 1, Lockett 2. There's going to be games where it could be that, but then there's going to be games where it's going to be Doug Baldwin 1, Jaron Brown 2. They're going to flip-flop. Best case scenario, you get what Tyler Lockett did last year. I don't think those numbers increase. Now, Lockett did have a lot of passes that he did drop last year. There were a lot of catchable targets. He still has wheels. And 2016, he did have a good December. They finally eased him back into the lineup. But my thing on Tyler Lockett is, if it would have happened, it would have happened already. All right, last guy is one of my guys that I want to talk up just because I have not high. I have moderate expectations for the guy because I know he is going to be the number 3 target in the offense, and I touched on him a little bit. It's James Washington. I want you guys to kind of sit back in a little bit, and here's why I'm on James Washington. No, this is not Nicky trying to get somebody to buy James Washington, because I will keep him. You send me your offer, I will reject it. But I want to talk about James Washington a little bit, okay? He's a rookie wide receiver. He was a phenomenal wide receiver in college. Those two things would translate very well in the NFL, but now he is the number 3 option in a Pittsburgh Steelers offense. A lot of those wide receivers get eased in a bit, okay? And I get that. If you want to go all the way back, all right? The year they won with Cowher, they bought in a guy called Santonio Holmes who didn't break out until maybe his second year. And the reason being was they didn't have a defined role for the guy yet, all right? They didn't. They had Cedric Wilson, I believe, still rostered, who I don't understand why he was even on that team. He was just a waste of space. And then you go in, the most memorable one that kind of got eased into the first Martavis Bryant role. Mike Wallace was the first Martavis Bryant. He was the guy who could go deep down the field, and then you had Hines Ward and Santonio Holmes going across the middle of the field. That's what they did that year with Bruce Arians. Then you had 2 guys named Emmanuel Sanders and Antonio Brown. One of them was average. The other one came out and became this modern day Jerry Rice is now what everybody's calling him. I mean, he's phenomenal. Then Martavis Bryant came in and kind of got eased in later on. I expect the same thing with James Washington. What people are kind of forgetting about is that James Washington fits the mold of the Mike Wallace and the Martavis Bryant. He's going to be the guy that's going to go deep down the middle of the field and try to make jump ball catch situations. Now, I think James Washington and Mike Williams are on that same tier. They're probably going to be the third, or no way James Washington is the second. I think Williams has a better path to be the second target on that roster. But ladies and gentlemen, I do think that he can be very serviceable. Antonio Brown and Emmanuel Sanders and Santonio Holmes took longer to develop because they were not playing in that role. Now, the one thing that is good for those guys is if there's one-on-one coverage, Ben Roethlisberger chucks it up. And I think James Washington is the perfect guy to do it. In fact, he's been working with the first team offense. The timing is a little off, and you're going to expect that with a rookie. But I will say that by season's end, James Washington will at least be a flex in our league. I just think the talent is too good to pass up. He's going to make a lot of fans happy this year.